Welcome back. We're not saying the episode number anymore.
Yeah, I have no idea.
We've changed it. Yeah, it's. I think it's actually, this one is a memorable one. It's 20.
Oh, nice.
So we've made it 20 episodes in a year and 3/4.
Good.
I think it's been. So
Sure.
that's pretty good. And Marky has listened to us talk now for 10 hours.
Is that right?
If
Yeah.
every
Oh,
episode was
yeah.
30 minutes, and I think some were longer.
Yeah, they are. Yeah. Nice.
So good. That is worth it. That's what we've
Is that
accomplished.
right? Yes. That's what Marky needed.
Actually, one of the episodes, I don't remember if I told you, one of our episodes took off a bit and got like more views than any of the other videos. It got like 150 views and people subscribed to it.
Did they really?
Yeah. It was the one with the thumbnail that you didn't like.
Oh, the cigarette one?
Yeah, the cigarette. Because that is a very
Yeah.
like kind of like YouTube-y clickbaity thumbnail.
We got bad subscribers though.
Yeah, no, these people were like, thank you, or some guy said, this
you
is
for showing
good.
this.
Said this is good, like, good work on this. I'm commenting just to help the algorithm out. And yeah, so people liked it.
People
And
know that we just are doing it for the algorithm.
yeah, they know. They could tell. They could tell. Yeah, well, that's what we'd need if we don't do the thumbnails, then we need people commenting to make it seem.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So keep doing it, guys. Whoever's out there.
Yeah.
I don't know if we still have the Brazilian guy though.
Yeah, I don't know.
We spoke too ill of Brazil in that episode.
Did we? Yeah.
I think I might have.
I said something about Jesus. I don't know. That
Yeah,
was
I think they are very religious actually
Oh, are
in
they?
Brazil.
Interesting.
Because Rio de Janeiro has the huge Jesus statue.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that? Yeah. So
Well.
we lost him for
Did they?
sure.
I didn't say something like,
No.
who knows?
Yeah.
Not too important.
No, yeah. I think,
We'll get more.
yeah, we'll get more Christians
Brazilian
on
people. Yeah.
the podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Mm-hmm.
overall, today is an important day, not just because it's the 20th episode.
Mm-hmm.
Not that we need to talk about the voting much more. There was just one more thing that I remembered after it, just to impose a little bit of our viewpoints on the viewers.
Right.
I'll briefly summarize what we said yesterday. Essentially, we were discussing whether or not to vote.
It's almost bad things to tell people.
Yeah,
But,
no, this is
yeah.
good stuff.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
yeah.
this is the stuff that people will listen to, and it's not...
This is stuff the government doesn't want you to know.
Yeah, this is what the current government doesn't want you to know.
Yeah.
But I think that everyone vaguely agrees with this idea, or at least they would if they didn't believe so strongly in something else. This seems like a more natural idea, and it's kind of something that people intuit for themselves a little bit, in the sense that they know things aren't quite right and that they could be a lot better, and that the people who they're voting for aren't the best choices, and they're just doing it because they don't want they're worried that the other side is going to take over. And what we were discussing yesterday was, when we go to vote, or should we even go to vote, because it doesn't seem to matter either way which things go, or which way things go tomorrow. And
Because, like, we didn't choose the candidates.
yeah, because we didn't choose the candidates, and neither of them will be that good, either Democrat or Republican. And is it worth it to vote for a third party, because there's no chance of a third party winning? And my stance on this was that it is worth it to vote for a third party, because that is the optimal situation. If everyone were to engage in that activity, it would lead to an actual good outcome, instead of voting out of fear for one side or the other and continuing the kind of negative outcomes that we've been experiencing. I think that it could lead to a good situation, but only if everyone, or only if enough people do it.
Right.
And
Yeah.
Louis will
That's
explain.
Like, That's like the optimistic outlook on it.
Yeah.
But yeah, the reason I don't disagree with that, but I disagree with the idea that you should vote, because there's the issue of the tragedy of the commons, where it's like the ideal outcome is for everybody to vote for what they want, but for each individual person, there's no actual motivation to vote or to like contribute at all, because your contribution is just one of millions. So like you're contributing less than like 0.0001% or something. So it's like a single person doing something different has no effect. It's just everybody combined has the effect. So it's a kind of like a paradoxical situation, but like the logical conclusion for each individual person is to do nothing and to just ignore it.
Yeah. And I agree with that, depending on what your values are. If you place a really large value on your time versus on the very minuscule effect that you do have when you vote. Because thinking about it in a different way, if you recognize the stakes are higher in a certain situation, say if you're on a platform in the middle of the ocean and it's just a really long platform that goes for miles and there's a million people on one side and a million people on another side and a wall in the middle, and you can push on the wall to move it towards the other side. And at the end of this fight, half the people are going to be pushed off of the platform and drown in the ocean. Do you bother pushing because your push makes no difference when there's a million people pushing, but it does potentially save your life? And if everyone thought that way, then your side would all die, even if there were just a few people on the other side pushing. You can't see them or what they're doing. And is it worth pushing? In that situation, I think people recognize more so that it would make sense to push because the stakes are a lot higher. And their impact, even though it's incredibly small, the alternative to doing something is potentially dying, and it's worth it to put a really small impact into something that could be great.
Yeah. So I think it's the same situation because it's almost like the logic is the same, that your contribution does nothing.
Yeah.
Or virtually nothing.
Yeah.
But it's like to counterbalance the logic is like a greater fear.
Yeah.
If like this, the fear is that a different side wins and like you get slightly different laws. But in that, like the fear is of dying.
Yeah.
So the fear like counteracts any logic you could possibly think of.
Yeah.
Because like there's such a great fear.
Not necessarily that it counteracts the logic, but that because the logic is the same in either situation, it's just that the value of each outcome is so much higher. Because a lot of people don't understand almost or don't care, and it really isn't as significant as life and death necessarily for most people, which side wins or which politician is in control. But in that situation, it is life versus death, and you do. It's not true to say you have no impact, because you do have a very small impact.
Yeah. What's like the exact logic for like why you should contribute?
Yeah, because you do have a very small impact, and it's possible that there could be 900,005 people pushing and 900,006 on your side. And you could actually make the difference in that very simplified situation because you don't know how many people are coming to push against you. And regardless, you're still having a small impact, even if it's even if there's just 10 people more. Just because you're not the deciding factor doesn't mean you don't have an impact.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess you have to put it as like, say there's like a million people. So your like 1/1,000,000th contribution has to be multiplied by like the danger of not doing it, versus like the benefit of like the bad things that would happen get multiplied by the low number because you're barely preventing them.
Yeah.
But the good things that happen if you don't are multiplied by basically like 1 minus that small number. So in that case, it's like you like just sitting there and watching people do it is the best you get out of it.
Yeah.
So you might as well contribute.
That's making the assumption that the best thing to do is just to sit and not even that you don't enjoy.
The best thing to do is probably like to cheer on people and like be like push harder or something.
Well, I mean, not even in terms of that, but just that the most enjoyable thing or what people would naturally do is just sit as opposed to push something. Yeah. Because potentially if the natural thing is to push, then everyone would be pushing and we wouldn't even need to have this discussion because...
Right. Yeah, assuming the natural thing is to just like relax. Or, in this case, to like just sit at home and not vote. Yeah. Like assuming that is like you weigh that benefit as like the full cost of it, because regardless, or like if you don't vote, you get the full enjoyment of just doing that. Yeah. And then a tiny bit of unenjoyment when the laws are different or whatever, like 1/1,000,000th different or whatever. Yeah. So it's like if there's enough people and the risk is low enough, or it's like there's two situations. One, the risk is low enough, like in this situation, the laws don't affect me that much, or like the policies or whatever. So the small contribution that I have is multiplied by like a small enough thing that it doesn't matter. But with the boat, it's like the fear is great enough that as long as there's a low enough people, I would contribute. Yeah. Because even like a 1,000th would be enough. But if it's 1,000,000, that might not be enough for it to be...
So would you still contribute in 1,000,000?
On the boat?
Yeah.
Probably not at that point, because at that point it's like, it's almost just up to chance. Yeah. And it's like, if there's a 50% chance I'm going to die, I'll just relax for the last few minutes of my life and just be like, well, I couldn't have helped this regardless.
Yeah.
It was random anyway, type of
Yeah.
thing. I know, like,
Yeah, I feel like on the boat, there would be a lot of other factors at play, similar to real life. How there are a bunch of factors in terms of we see the poll numbers released every year and just like the results, and we realize that voting a different way isn't going to make much of a difference. But on the boat, I feel like everyone would be jumping up to the wall to do it, and there wouldn't really be many people
Probably.
sitting behind. And so you would assume that everyone on the other side was doing it, and that it was kind of going to be a 1 million versus 1 million situation. And I feel like in that situation, I would be up and at it. Like, it wouldn't seem as much up to chance.
no, the issue is individual differences are too big of a factor where it's like, say, like there's 1 million people on each side, and like 100,000 or like 100 people on the other side are like bodybuilders, and there's 100 people on your side who are like emaciated.
Yeah.
Then there's no chance of you winning,
Yeah.
no matter how many of your people contribute.
Yeah. But it could be really
yeah.
close. Like, on
Yeah.
average, shouldn't everything be really close in a group of 1 million? Like, the average
Yeah.
should be really close, and just 1 or 2 people not pushing should...
I'm not great with statistics, but I think the issue is that like there's too much noise. Whereas like if you have like 1 billion people, I think
Yeah.
like the more people you have, the more that it would be averaged out.
Yeah.
But in like a noisy situation with like the individual differences between people
Yeah.
and like how much like energy you have or whatever.
1 million is a lot, I feel.
That
It's
is
like
a lot, yeah.
1,000, I'd be like...
Yeah.
And then it seems more impactful what
Exactly.
you're doing. So,
Yeah. So I think it might be like a kind of like a curve where it's like if there's enough people, it will be average enough that like each person's contribution or like that like your billion equals their billion approximately. But if you have too few, it's like there's a decent chance their billion would be a little bit, or 1 million would be a little bit better than yours, or yours
Yeah.
would be a little better.
Yeah.
So your contribution wouldn't matter as much. But if it's only like 10, then one person not doing it matters a lot.
yeah, that...
And like no matter like what
Yeah.
the statistics are, like clearly
Yeah.
you have to contribute.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
I would still probably in any situation, like if the stakes were living or not, contribute just for the sake of
Fear.
for the fear of the alternative, but for the sake of there is always a chance that it comes down to that little bit of extra energy, and I don't value as much just not doing stuff, like just avoiding the stuff to not do it.
Yeah.
And so I place very little value on that and a lot on the positive outcomes.
Right. And yeah, I think that sort of ties into the issue of like we're framing this logically, but at the end of the day, like the
Your
values we
determine-
place on each thing are illogical. So
Yeah.
it'll be different for each person. Like,
Yeah.
To me, I value the change in policies like almost zero because I don't know what they are in the first place.
Yeah.
So to me, the voting doesn't mean anything. The boat, like I like to live, so
Yeah.
I would probably contribute even if it was 1 million or something, or like
Yeah.
the wrong number. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And I guess there would eventually, if we had infinite time to discuss this, we could probably get to a place where we understand the issue enough. Because I don't actually fully understand what exactly would happen if we did have better politicians. But I am picturing something really good. Just because, like, I think that there are a lot of inefficiencies, and if we just had people who were investing more heavily into technology research, like we could potentially have AI already, and it seems like a situation that could be really good, but I'm not actually sure of that.
Yeah.
And maybe that's a little optimistic, but
Sure.
yeah.
But no, but actually, that is an interesting point of like not exactly what you're saying, but the idea of like our government seems to work really badly. Like there's always like the deadlock in Congress and like this and that of like the two parties arguing about stuff. But it's almost better to have two ineffective parties than one really effective one, because it's like the thing about like ideologies where it's like a single party, unless they know exactly what to do, which they aren't going to know exactly what to do,
Yeah.
they're inevitably going to be doing some things wrong and like marginalizing parts of the society and like
Yeah.
have some corruption and stuff. And it's like the more effective they are, the faster they can get corrupt and the faster they can like oppress people.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. That's why I'm not
Yeah.
saying necessarily that I would be voting for one specific party, but just
Yeah.
if everyone always voted on who they thought would really do the best job, then it would kind of flip-flop around a lot, because
Oh, yeah.
someone would do something and often it would work, but often it would be a mistake. And someone would say, here's how we can fix that, and I'm going to right the wrongs that this person's done. It would be a different person.
No, yeah.
Yeah.
It could work a lot better. Like
I'm picturing something a little fantastical in the sense that everyone is thinking really hard about it and doing their research. And yeah.
I sort of changing the subject, but
Yeah.
but yeah,
But that,
it could be better.
it could be.
But government seems like a hard thing to design properly and to have it
Yeah.
actually work.
Yeah, it seems very tough. And there are good people working on it. Not on government, but on designing things.
There's people working on it.
Yeah, like Lex Friedman is.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think he's working on the government specifically, but he seems to be. I've been listening to him recently, and he seems to be speaking about things in a more, I don't want to say optimistic way, but just a more. His whole thing is like love, and so he talks about things in a more loving way and compassionate way than a lot of people.
Wait, what do you mean by that? He loves the things, or he says love is important?
Yeah, he says love is important, and he loves the things. And he, for example,
I'm confused. Yeah,
for example, he was talking to Ben Shapiro today, and he was bringing up times that Ben Shapiro had said, or times that Ben Shapiro's, or people, not his followers, but someone who had followed him ended up committing some kind of murder or atrocity, not saying it was because of Ben Shapiro, but just like this was a guy who would check Ben Shapiro a lot and then ended up doing something. And he asked Ben Shapiro, what would you, instead of confronting him with, like a lot of people would and saying, oh, look at you, you're inspiring this kind of stuff.
Right.
He asked him, what would you say to a person who's listening to you and who looks up to you and is thinking of doing this kind of thing?
Yeah.
And it opens up a more interesting area than like the just bashing people.
Right.
Yeah, where people get to look at what they're saying that might be influencing the wrong kind of behaviors, and there's all kinds of stuff that you can get out of that.
Yeah, it's like the difference between like talking to somebody to get some information that would help both of you versus just like talking to someone to like accomplish a goal.
Yeah.
Or like accomplish some like victory or something.
Yeah.
It is like kind of like the zero-sum game if you just like confront Ben Shapiro and say, how dare you, type of thing.
Yeah.
It's like no one gets anything out of that except like you'll feel superior and he'll feel inferior if you win, type of thing.
And this actually leads to an interesting thing that he was saying about, not that I'm not taking a stance on this, but he was Lex was asking Ben Shapiro about his stance on abortion, right? And what I like about how Lex does these things is he's not just focused on that issue, but he asked him what he thought about his stance on abortion, and it, went in some direction where he was talking about consciousness and, the potential for life. And then it led Lex to ask him, well, in the future, how do you think robots will be regarded as, or will robots be regarded as life, and will they have to have the same rights as us? And it led it to a more interesting place than just focusing on the same stuff that people are always talking about.
That's cool.
Which I liked.
Yeah. Yeah, that will be an interesting situation because like this is almost like the perfect time to be talking about it, like politically, to be talking about abortion and stuff, because I feel like we're getting somewhat close to like some conscious AI of some sort.
Yeah, and every time we delete a program, we could be killing something. Yeah.
Which I feel like is the problem of like there's political stuff about abortion, but there's no like, or I guess there's podcasts and stuff, but the politics has nothing to do with the actual issue.
Yeah.
Like I always find like the irony of, or almost like the there's some word for it, but the thing of like it's like pro-life versus pro-choice, whereas both of them are saying that they're good things, and that the other one is a bad thing, and it's like, neither of them it's almost like by definition neither of them are right, because they can't both be right.
Yeah.
So like either half of the world is lying and the other half is telling the truth, or everyone's lying, type of thing.
Yeah.
Or like everyone's half lying, type of thing.
Yeah, and
but I don't know. What I'm trying to say is that like this is not like the political atmosphere of like people like telling or saying that other people are absolutely wrong is not the place for like any sort of discourse and like advancement.
And should they be talking about it in a more philosophical way, or
just talking about it at all?
Yeah.
like to me it seems like it's just like people just like yelling at each other saying you're wrong and I'm right, type of thing.
Yeah.
And it's like no one's ever right if they're saying that.
Yeah, that is the case. There's, I
I'm
feel
not
like
explaining this very well.
sometimes there are people who discuss it on, like, usually on a podcast or something.
Yeah.
Because that's a kind of, at least in our situation, where we don't have a big following, it almost de-escalates things, because instead of, if two people are just having a conversation, then, and if, especially if they don't know each other, then typically they would think they have more of a stake in whatever they're talking about than they might actually, and they might care more about it and really strongly be trying to convince the other one of whatever they're talking about.
Yeah.
Whereas in this podcast situation, we're just discussing things just for the sake of discussing them and not trying to come to any kind of conclusion.
Yeah, like we don't care too much about like the ramifications of,
Yeah.
of the conclusion we get to.
Yeah, it's just for the sake of discussion, we'll talk about these things.
Yeah.
And that is a much more inviting environment than
Yeah.
debating something that you are deciding.
And it's actually a lot like the thing with the voting, whereas like each person on the news or whatever is like just one of like thousands or whatever that are on social media or the news and stuff, and their contribution to like supporting like the absolute, like I am absolutely with this side type of thing,
Yeah.
their contribution has very little effect. But since they're all kind of like in the hysteria of like committing to a choice because they think it's so important, they've almost like done like the illogical thing and like committed to pushing on the wall. Whereas like if no one pushed on the wall and we just sort of like talked it out instead of deciding that one side had to die or live or whatever,
Yeah.
then we could actually like come to a conclusion.
Yeah.
So it's like this is like a very similar thing to voting, where it's like I'm not going to take a stance because my stance does nothing to the end goal. Like,
So, but what, yeah, so what would you say we should do instead? Because because the reason that I want to say we should be going and doing my thing is that if everyone
yelling
were
pro whatever to
yeah,
everybody.
not that thing, not that
Okay.
thing, but going and voting for who we really think would be a good candidate is because that's what, if everyone did, we would be in an optimal situation.
Yeah.
But if everyone, at least as far as you've explained, just sitting and doing nothing, if everyone did that, then just whoever walked into the White House would take power.
Yeah. It doesn't work in the voting. It's like, yeah, it's like the abortion thing is like the opposite, where it's like everyone voting on one side or the other is a bad thing. Because the more people that vote, the more like, almost like the more the true, like the actual discussions are covered up. Because if Ben Shapiro, whoever that guy's name is, if Ben Shapiro is like so like ingrained in his idea because like everybody's talked to like needs him to commit to one side or the other, he wouldn't even hear Lex Friedman. He would just like assume Lex Friedman said something about this side, I have to assume he's on that side or I'm in danger type of thing.
Yeah.
But if like half of the people aren't talking about it, then like he can just not care as much and like realize that voting or like that committing to one side or the other has very little effect in each instance.
So what should, I guess, are you saying that everyone should do what you do and just not vote, or what would you think would be a good way for things to go? Because I have a way that I think things would be good with.
I think my way of doing it applies to me.
Okay.
And then if everybody follows it, we would just fall into chaos because no one would vote and no one would go to work or anything.
Yeah. I guess that, okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
I don't want to spread this idea too much.
I see. So you're more so just operating in the world.
Yeah.
Than
like operating as like a single person should.
Yeah.
But that if everyone did it, it would be bad.
Yeah.
Which is kind of like the paradox, I guess.
Yeah.
Of like a good way to do it, but a bad way if everyone did it.
So would you change your way if you saw a bunch of people doing what you were doing?
Yeah, it's hard to say. Like, I guess if so few people were voting, if it went down to like 100 people voting, then maybe it's more logical to vote.
Then you would start
voting.
Yeah,
it could be.
That would, that would
funny.
make sense. That would make sense. Yeah. That is an interesting way. I
wouldn't start yelling pro whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah.
I'm also not a woman, so doesn't apply to me too much. But
yeah. I respect that way because it does provide you with, I guess, the best, not the best, like it provides you with the best outcome that you can get as things are, assuming that you don't have much power to change them.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like the best for you, but the worst for society, almost.
Yeah, but like you've said, it doesn't really affect society.
Exactly.
Like,
Yeah.
if only you're doing it.
Yeah, it's like barely worse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or,
So, yeah.
I mean, in terms of like the things where you can have an impact but not be the final call, like there really isn't, unless it came down to one vote, there is zero direct impact from you not deciding to vote.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that is a way.
And this is why pollution happens and why we've destroyed the world and why we're like,
Yeah.
we can't decide on a candidate because the logical thing is always to not contribute.
Yeah. Depending on your values.
Yeah.
Because-
If you're like of sound mind almost.
Yeah.
And not like driven insane by the political like
Yeah.
fear mongering.
But I feel like I'm relatively of sound mind, and I just
Yeah.
have a more optimistic view of what could be.
Sound mind's wrong. That's the
Yeah.
wrong way of putting it. But yeah.
If you're less optimistic of the way things could go, I like to think of myself as very optimistic and
Yeah.
would like to do, because I do often frame things when I'm making choices in terms of, well, if everyone did this, would it work? And there are very few choices that you can actually make like that, because obviously not everyone can do the exact same thing. Just in terms of like, if you're deciding what job to get, there is no one job that everyone could do that would really work.
Right.
But
But like the concept of doing a job.
yeah,
is
yeah,
something else.
exactly.
Yeah.
The concept of doing something and doing something in a relatively sustainable way, and hopefully not, just try not to make things too much worse, at least. And you're not making things worse by voting or by not voting.
Yeah.
But I also like to help, like,
Right.
even if it does take up some time.
Yeah. And even though it's like, it is technically illogical, it is like the good person type of thing to do.
Yeah.
Like the optimistic.
Yeah.
Actually.
I don't know if you could say it's illogical. Like, it's illogical assuming that you really value
Yeah.
not doing the stuff.
Yeah. It's illogical from like a emotionless perspective, or like you don't believe in anything. You just do what seems logical to like a
To you.
yeah, to like a feelingless person or something.
Yeah.
That's
Psychopaths are doing weird stuff. I don't know.
yeah. It's like, that they have some. I think there's some feeling, like just not human emotion, or like not normal emotions, just like some drives. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like you wouldn't like be killing people if you didn't have some drive.
Yeah, I don't think
I don't
most of them kill people.
Actually, I
Yeah,
don't know.
because I think there is a statistic like 1 in 100 people is a psychopath, and
Oh.
yeah, it's higher than you think, or at least that's what they say.
Yeah.
And I feel like if they were all, it's probably a spectrum more so than like you're either a complete psychopath or not.
I think it's probably only like barely a higher percentage that they'll be a murderer or something.
Yeah,
Most of them are probably just good businessmen or something.
yeah, and yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
yeah, we definitely hear the really dramatized cases of being a psychopath.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah. Politics suck.
Yep. And the moral of this podcast, I think, is if you don't want to vote, then it's not worth it for you to do that. And if you do want to potentially have things go a different way, even though it's very unlikely, then you should vote.
That doesn't seem very conclusive. Almost.
Yeah, that's not very conclusive, but it is a very inconclusive situation.
Yeah,
Like,
it is one of
we're-
those things where it's like,
yeah, like we're not experts on this. And
yeah, it's almost like we've given like a non-answer almost because there is no answer.
yeah. Well, that's because everyone's different and everyone has different values. And so your answer is different from my answer, but
Yeah.
we gave answers at least for
Like an explanation.
types of people, at least.
Yeah.
At least our types of people.
Sure.
And I'm sure there will be other types of people who would like to see things very differently and don't think we should have voting at all. And
Yeah.
then you have different things that you need to do and take care of.
Or I think most people also consider like pro-life versus, or that's a bad example, but they consider like this political issue versus the opposite of it as life and death. And to them, it's like pushing the wall in the boat.
Yes.
That's
yes.
I think that a lot of people feel like. But
Yeah. No, that is.
But
yeah.
I would choose to be selfish and not care about anything.
I looked it up. It's only 3 minutes away,
The voting.
the voting.
I'm-
Not worth it. It's not worth
I
it.
can't spare a minute. I can spare 2 minutes. but
Yeah.
not 3.
Yep. All right. Well, we have, I think, 9 seconds left
Yeah.
before.
I don't like seeing the timer now because I saw that 2 minutes ago and I was like, oh, we gotta start wrapping it up.
Yep.
Oh,
There it goes.
But-
Well, goodbye.
Yep. Vote for
No one.